In today's video, we are going to compare two budget Bluetooth amplifiers that are kind of designed to either go in a golf cart, on a motorcycle, maybe a UTV or a side-by-side. They have Bluetooth, so if you don't have a head unit, you can pair your phone directly to the amplifier and then set it up with some speakers so that you can play music without making things overly complicated. I thought this was a good option for my golf cart build, and I picked up this $59 Audiozerone amplifier, and I've struggled with it a little bit. So today we're going to compare this one, which has some pros and some cons, to the $95 Velex, which looks relatively similar and has very similar specs. I'm hoping there's a few things on this that will not be quite as annoying as the Audiozerone. And then afterwards, we may even compare it to a $180, a brand name, a Kicker amplifier. This is a marine grade amplifier which doesn't have Bluetooth. So if you do have a head unit and you wanted to go with a more old-fashioned amplifier, there may be some pros to this. And by old-fashioned, I just mean it doesn't have Bluetooth, and it has some settings on the back which don't require 12 volt to remember them. One of the downfalls of these in our golf cart build was you need 12 volt, a constant 12 volt, for them to remember the settings. On this one anyways, and we're going to test out the others. So I'm going to grab a battery, and we are going to start with the Velex, and we're going to plug it in, and we're going to see how it behaves. Okay, once you get the box of the Velex VX505 open, you can see they give you a couple little screws, some instructions. This is the remote that you could put on your dash, or if you're on a motorcycle or something, a side-by-side, they even include this hose clamp that would let you mount the remote to it so that you could have it somewhere near your handlebar, or maybe potentially put it on a roll cage. So overall features of the Velex seem relatively similar to the Audiozerone. Now this amplifier's instructions, when I opened it, I realized it was kind of full of typos and even mistakes. You can see here they had the green listed as the right, the gray listed as the left. And so this did actually in reality follow standard speaker wiring. At least here on the Velex, it seems like they got their speaker wiring straight. They have channel 1 and channel 2 for, front and rear. Whereas in the instructions on the Audiozerone, they listed both as channel 1. So I found the instructions to be actually flat out wrong and or incorrect on the ZE3119. Whereas at least so far on the Velex, it seems like the instructions are accurate. Let's take a look at the harness, but generally what we do have is an RCA in and an RCA out, which is great. So if you had a wired connection, but then you can also Bluetooth connect to it. You have 4 channels, so your front and rear amplified channels on the way out. We have a remote line. This used to be used when you had an antenna, a powered antenna that would need to go up or down, but generally it's a signal wire that tells you, yes, my amplifier is on and running. So you have a 12 volt ignition, which tells it when to turn on and turn off, as well as the 12 volt constant and a ground. So pretty standard wiring setup compared to most amplifiers out there. So what they're showing you here is generally if you do not have an ignition wire, you can wire both the red and the yellow to the battery. And like in our golf cart situation where we don't have a constant 12 volt, we would put the red and the yellow both at that keyed part and the black to the ground. All right, overall, the wiring harness looks a little bit more quality than that of the ZE3119. The power cables are a little bit longer. They are combined into one with an inline fuse. So these would be your 3 cables that we're going to use to power the amplifier. These are the audio outs for our front left, right, and rear left, right. These are the amplified lines. And they use the standard colors for automotive speaker wires. So if you ever get confused, just Google those, and they're also in the instructions correctly. Now, the only difference, the things that are not labeled on here, is there is an RCA line in and out, and the only way to tell the difference is the color of the input. So this is gray and one is black. And in the instructions here, you can say the black is the aux in and the gray is the aux out. So the preamp out, what is leaving the unit. So for most situations, if you're going to do a line in, that would be black. The black ends here for the left and right. Now this is for our remote, and the remote does seem fairly high quality, a little bit higher quality than that of the ZE3119, but very similar. You have your volume up, volume down, pause, play, source selection. The button comes in a little case that you can install or recess into a dashboard or anything like that. So this does look a little bit more quality. I feel like the buttons are a little less floppy, but very similar. Very similar construction for these two so far. You do get this handlebar / roll bar mount, which you don't get with the Audiozerone. Okay, I undid the screws on the back and pulled it out of the aluminum case just to see what was going on the inside of this amplifier. This one is a TPA 3116, so it's a Texas Instruments bass amplifier board. So the board itself is that TPA 3116. You can see over here it has some 4R7, so 4.7 blocks. There's 2 of them. And this is relatively different setup to the board than the Audiozerone. I'll show you a photo in a second of that other board. The layout is actually quite different between the 2 boards, but this is what's going on the inside. I did like that on this one, it did seem like they have at least a bit of a gasket on the inside here holding it inside of the aluminum body. Whereas on the Audiozerone, there wasn't really a gasket to keep it watertight. It was a little bit more just plastic up against the aluminum box. Okay, let's put this back together and wire it up. I'm curious to see if it makes annoying voices the same way this Audiozerone does. My biggest pet peeve about this amplifier is every time you turn it on, it speaks in a voice the current source connection. So it'll go AUX or Bluetooth in a really loud voice. And it can be really quite scary because sometimes your volume was quite high. You go into the golf cart, you turn on the cart, and it's Bluetooth, it's yelling at you. And I'm hoping that this amplifier, please just do not have any built-in voices. All right, so we have some 12-volt power coming to it temporarily. I have both the yellow and the red wire clipped in here and the black wire there. What I've noticed is if it goes through a power cycle, you do need to hit a button to turn it on. So that is different than the ZE3119. That one, when it gets power, will come to life. So this one, if you fully disable the power, if you take off the 12 volt on both, it looks like you do need to physically hit a button to get it to come back. Then there's purple, which is line in, blue, which is Bluetooth. And once it's in Bluetooth mode, I'm just going to check on my phone if we can see it. There it is there, the VX505. So we will try pairing to the amplifier.
Connected.
Okay, connected it said. I don't like voices, but so far we've got a voice. Okay, so I'm just playing a DJ set now. If I turn this volume up, does seem to work pretty well. The volume, the built-in volume here, does not change the volume on the phone. Let me try to see if I hit pause. So pausing does pause it. Now this is over Bluetooth, so it's actually pausing my phone. I'm gonna hit play. Okay, so that does work. So the play pause button definitely does work. And obviously you can change the volume down on the amplifier. So this is turning the volume down on the amplifier. This is turning the volume back up on the amplifier. However, there is still volume here, which has to go up. The first thing I want to try is unplugging just the red wire to see how the amplifier deals with a key off situation. So if you turn the key off, get out of your cart, come back, turn the key on, I want to see how quickly everything goes back to the way it was before. So I'm just going to pull the red wire out. It paused my music, which is good. It didn't make any big pops on the speakers. I do notice if you cut full power, sometimes you do notice more of a pop on the speakers. So let's plug it back in to simulate a key back on and see what happens.
Connected.
Uh-oh, a voice. Okay, so it says connected, and it did start to play automatically. Now my volume seems a little lower than it was before. Okay, yeah, so every time you change the key ignition, it changes the volume back to a very middle state. So I had it really high, and when
Connected.
it'll say connected. But once it starts playing again, yeah, the volume, every time the key loses its connection, it doesn't memorize where the volume was. It goes back towards around the middle. So you are gonna need to tweak the volume up and down on the amplifier if that's what you want to do. So that is a little bit of a downfall. Okay, so overall we have some similar annoyances. It has a voice. It was gonna speak connected every time you get in and out of your car. The main benefit of the Velex is it turns the volume all the way back to the mid-range every single time before it speaks, unlike the Audiozerone, which speaks at the last set volume, which could be quite loud. The downfall is now every time I hop on my motorcycle or into my ATV or into my golf cart, I need to turn the volume back up, which is a significant amount of clicks to get that back up. So that's the only downfall is on the Velex. It does not remember your last volume. That's the only other downfall. And on the Velex, if we do a full power cycle, so I'm gonna undo the power and then plug the power back in. So if you don't have dedicated 12 volt, it doesn't turn back on and then connect. The Audiozerone will turn back on, say Bluetooth really loud. Actually, it won't. It will go to aux, so it'll say aux, at which point you would need to change the input. On the Velex, if you do a full power cycle, it doesn't even turn back on until you hit the button on it, and then it will go back to the connected and back to Bluetooth. So that does seem reasonable. Let me just try the purple input. So this would be line in. Let's see if the Velex remembers purple. So I'm just gonna do a full power cycle off. Hear the speaker pop. That's because we're pulling full power out, and it doesn't really know that it's shutting down gracefully. It's almost like doing a hard reset on it. So I'm going to plug this back in. We're going to see if it'll go back to the auxiliary or what it goes back to. Okay, we're going to have to hit the power. Yeah, so it went back to purple, but it did automatically connect, so the Bluetooth is still on. Okay, so these are some of the quirks of these budget Bluetooth amplifiers. The pros are that if you had a boat or you're doing something with, something or building a boom box or even a home audio system, a setup where you get into the car, you don't mind turning it on, you don't mind setting the volume, and then the power stays on for quite a long period of time. It's okay to have this reset and have to kind of reset it up every single time. Now, in a golf cart, if you don't have a dedicated 12 volt, you are going to be futzing with these almost every single time you get into the cart to put the volume at the right level, and you're going to be listening to these words. Both of them are speaking the words. So that is kind of the downfall, in my opinion, with the golf cart. You're in, you're out, you're in, you're out. You're like, grabbing groceries or you're parking, they're quick 10-minute rides. And if you have to spend a minute or two to get the volume right every single time, it is a bit of a pain, especially having to kind of keep these at a spot that's within hand's reach. Those may be some of the reasons it might make sense to just go to a more traditional amplifier. If you have some type of head unit that you can pair to, this you can at least set your gain levels, your volume levels with a good old-fashioned dial on the back. And when it turns on, it just stays at that level without it speaking to you, without voices coming alive. So originally what I thought would be a really quick and easy, more advanced way to set up an amplifier on a golf cart, actually with both of these They're different, so they both have different quirks, but neither is about quite right to make things seamless for you every time you get in and out of the cart. Honestly, overall, I think the Velex is better. I do like that when it turns off and turns on, it puts the volume back to 50, and the connected voice is a little bit less irritating than the voice on this that says aux and Bluetooth really, really loud. If I come into the garage at night and I just turn the cart on for a second, it'll say Bluetooth extremely loud in the garage if I was just trying to check something like the battery level. And that is crazy, whereas at least this, I don't think if it was not able to find my phone, it might not yell out connected every single time. So the other benefits of going to a Kicker, we're now at $180, but look at how nice this is. It even comes with a little certificate from Kicker where they dyno tested the watts on this amplifier. They were able to tell me it passed. They promised it was 150 watts, and look at what we got, 164 on this one. So, they kind of do a little bit more when it comes to QA, quality, and actually guaranteeing that you're gonna get what you're paying for as far as some of the advertised wattage goes. So this is the KMA150.2. So it's a 2-channel amplifier. These Bluetooth amplifiers were all 4 channels. For the golf cart, I really only needed 2 channels anyways, so that's why I went for this simple 2-channel amplifier. There is no plug-on harness because everything is just right on the side. We would have our ground, our 12-volt, and dedicated remote, the ignition, as well as our highs, which are going out for our speakers on the cart. The cool thing about this is that on the back, we will just set our volume using the gain. We can turn this up or down, set it once, and then from then on, I'll just use my phone to do volume up and volume down with Bluetooth. Now, this amplifier does not have Bluetooth, so we will have to use the head unit on the golf cart, pair the phone to the head unit on the golf cart like usual. So when I get in the cart, I'll still need to hit Bluetooth on the head unit, but then after that, this volume and everything else will just work as usual. We can kind of fine tune it between the head unit's volume and this volume to get the right gain and balance between the front speakers and the sidebar. The line ins are on the same side underneath these little caps. We would have RCA line ins, and this looks like it is potentially going to be the best no-fuss solution for the golf cart. So as much as I was hoping to use something simple like this for $59, I spent $95 to try out the Velex to see if it was quieter or better, and it does solve some of the issues. The loud voice gets turned down, but then it does add other issues like having to change the volume back up every single time, and on a hard power cycle, you would need to turn it on independently. So more button pushes still. This sadly didn't solve our solution either. Closer, if I had to buy one for a boat or for a situation like that, I think that the Velex is maybe a little bit cleaner, higher quality feel on the buttons, higher quality enclosure, so it might be worth that little bit of extra. Now for the golf cart world, I think that these may have been a mistake, and I will end up installing the Kicker 2-channel amplifier. So hang tight for that video. We'll do the installation on this and update to our harness. And if you want more on the Audiozerone, I have another video where I talk about some of the pain points from the golf cart install on that one. Anyways, I hope this was helpful. I've made a mess in opening 3 different amplifiers so that you don't have to. I hope that helps. Any questions about them, let me know. I am very picky about the button switches and where things remember when a power cycle and a non-power cycle if you just have a remote trigger. So I hope that helps people who are thinking about these amplifiers just to be prepared for what the on-off cycle looks like and the pairing cycles. So cheers.